In this video, I will share with you how to set up your development environment for writing Python code. I myself have been writing Python code for over 10 years, I've been teaching Python code for about 5, and I have messed around with pretty much every tool that you can imagine. So what I'm going to show you here is personally my environment. This is what I recommend and use on a daily basis, and that's going to include all of my tools for virtual environments, my code editor, my formatters, my autocomplete, my extensions, pretty much everything I use on a daily basis. So with that said, let me show you how to set this up after I set up the segue to our sponsor. Before we get started, I need to thank Linode for sponsoring this video. I've been using and working with Linode for nearly 3 years now, and they've consistently been my go-to choice for hosting my applications and servers. In fact, right now I'm using Linode to host the official Tech with Tim Discord bot, a website, multiple of my domains, and a Kubernetes cluster. Now, Linode was just recently acquired by Akamai, and as a part of this acquisition, they're going to be adding more than a dozen new data centers around the world in the next year. Linode makes it super easy to spin up servers with their one-click app marketplace and have tons of written guides and YouTube videos on their channel to help you get started. Now, if you're having any issues, you can reach out to their 24/7 support team and actually talk with a real human being. Now, Linode's pricing is simple with no hidden fees and full transparency, and you can test out Linode services for free by using the link in the description and claiming an $100 60-day credit for any new accounts. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with Linode over the past few years, and one last thank you to them for sponsoring this video. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this. Now, just as a quick table of contents, I'm going to show you what I use for virtual environments, what I use for my code editor, what I use for my formatter, for my autocomplete, for my terminal, and then all of the extensions and actually a bonus tool at the end that you guys can hopefully find some value in. So let's get started here. The first thing we need to set up for our development environment is something that can handle virtual environments. Now, if you're not familiar with virtual environments, this allows us to have multiple Python versions installed on our computer and different versions of those versions, separate environments for each project that we work on. This way we can separate out the packages that we need and kind of keep our dependencies separate and nice and clean. It is not a great idea to only have one version of Python and just dump all of your dependencies into that. Oftentimes you need to switch between different environments. That's what we use a virtual environment for. So the virtual environment software I use is called Anaconda. There is a built-in one called VenV or VNVV. I don't know exactly how you pronounce that. Anyways, I like Anaconda. This is the one I've been using for a very long time, and I'm going to recommend that you download it. Now, I'll leave a link to the download in the description. However, there is a few notes to keep in mind while you're installing this software. Specifically, I'm going to bring up a tab here. You want to make sure that when you go through the installation process, right here is where it is, you click this button, let me zoom in, that says add Anaconda to my path environment variable. Now, it tells you it's not recommended to do this, but I guarantee that for 99% of you, you want this on your path, and having it on your path allows you to use this command directly from your normal terminal rather than having to open up the Anaconda terminal. So make sure you add this to your path. If you don't add it to your path or you already have it installed, I will leave this link in the description that shows you how to add this to your path. Right here, see, add Anaconda to path if you don't already have it installed. If you're not sure if you have it on your path or not, then what you can do is open up any random terminal. So it doesn't matter if you're terminal command prompt, and you can simply type conda. And if conda works, you have it on your path. If it doesn't, then you should add it before going through the rest of this video. All right, so at this point in time, I'm going to assume that you have Anaconda installed. Regardless though, listen to this next minute or two because this is going to be important to make sure you don't mix up your different Python versions. So many of you very likely have multiple Python versions on your computer. And you have that because you've gone to the Python website and you've downloaded multiple versions of it. So maybe you downloaded 3.9 a year ago, and then you downloaded 3.11 now, or you downloaded 3.7 5 years ago, or whatever it was. Either way, chances are you have another version of Python on your computer. Now, the way you can check that, at least on Windows, is you can search for IDLE in your Windows kind of search bar here. If you're on Mac, you can go to the Spotlight search, and Linux probably a similar thing. You can see here, though, that I have IDLE, which is kind of the default code editor that comes with Python from the Python website, and I have two of them here, right? 3.8 and 3.10. Now, what this is telling me is that I actually have two Python interpreters on my system that are different versions, and this means that I may be installing dependencies into the wrong version. So I would highly recommend that you uninstall all of these Python versions unless you know what you're doing. In my situation, I know what I'm doing with these, so that you don't mix them up in the future. But just keep that in mind. You may have multiple Python versions and you may be installing packages into the wrong version. Now, if you don't have any of these IDLE packages and you added Conda to path, chances are that the Python version you're going to be using when you type the command Python or Python 3, depending on your operating system, is going to be the Python provided by Anaconda. Now, Anaconda has something known as a base environment. That base environment is what you use by default, no matter what. Now, if you change the environment, then you can use a custom environment. But for any of you that don't have additional Python compilers, interpreters, the Python version you're going to be using is the base version or the base environment from Anaconda. I know this is a little bit confusing, but I just want to make this clear because this is the biggest mistake everyone makes when they set up their Python development environment. Really, what you need to understand is which one you're using at any point in time. So I'll show you how to set that up, but first let's look at how to create different virtual environments using Anaconda. So the first thing we want to type here is Conda. Again, at this point, it should be installed and added to your path. Once we've typed Conda and we know that this command is working, we can create a virtual environment. So let me make this full screen. So to do that, we're going to type Conda create -- name and then give our virtual environment a name. In my case, I'm going to give mine the name of ProgrammingExpert, which is the best platform to use if you want to learn how to code and more about Python. Check it out from the link in the description. And then I can alternatively specify what the version of Python is that I want to use for this virtual environment. So I can say Python is equal to, and then give it a version, 3.9, 3.8, any valid version. So I'm going to go with 3.9 here. When I do 3.9, it is going to download this Python version for me and install this in a new virtual environment. Now, keep in mind, these virtual environments can be fairly large, so you don't want to create too many if you don't actually need them. So I'm just running through the installation steps here. Once it's done, I will be right back. All right, so now that this has been created, what I can do is use this virtual environment. Right now, notice when I type Python, I'm using Python version 3.10. You can see that from right here. Now, that's not the version that I used to set up my virtual environment. I used 3.9. So if I want to use this virtual environment, I need to type the command that's right here. Conda activate, and then I'm going to type ProgrammingExpert. Okay, so that's the name of my virtual environment. And then you're going to see kind of a parenthesized name of your environment. And now this terminal is going to be using the Python version from this new virtual environment. So now if I type Python, notice I have my version 3.9. Now this also means that if I want to install any packages and I use a command like pip or pip3, which should just be working by default in this environment, it's going to install them in 3.9, not in my 3.10 version. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense, but this is where you would kind of separate out your different dependencies for different projects and create different virtual environments for any different project that you're working on that has, well, different dependencies. Okay, so that is kind of the basics here. There's a lot more you can do with Conda, but I imagine for many of you, all you're going to need to do is set up a Python version, install some dependencies, and then you need to know how to use it and stop using it. So if I want to stop using this, I'm going to type Conda deactivate, and that's going to remove me now out of this environment. Now, let's say that I want to now get into the base environment for Anaconda. Again, for any of you that don't have other Python versions installed, that's what you're going to be using by default. Otherwise, though, for me, if I want to be in the base version of Anaconda, I need to type Conda activate. Now, this, again, brings me into the kind of standard Python version for Anaconda. And now if I type Python, I'm using Python 3.8, which is what came with the Anaconda I installed a very long time ago, right? Back in 2020. Anyways, I'm going to quit Python here, and I'm going to type deactivate. So it's just important that you understand the difference here. You have your base environment, you have any custom environments that you create, and you have any other Python interpreters on your system, and you want to know which one you're using and don't get mixed up with your dependencies. All right, so sorry for the quick cut here, but I'm just going to run you through a few useful Conda commands you may want to use. So first one is Conda info --envs. This is going to list out all of the different environments that you have on your system. Pretty useful to know. And then another one you may want to use is deleting an environment. So to do that, you're going to use conda, env, and then remove, and then -n for name, and then the name of the environment you want to remove. So let's say I want to remove, say ProgrammingExpert, and then that will delete the environment. Okay, that's really all you need to know about Anaconda. There is also a graphical user tool you can use that kind of shows you some information, so you can open that up if you want. But for me, I always just use it from the terminal. Now let's head over to VS Code and see how we can use these Conda environments. All right, so I've opened up Visual Studio Code. This is the code editor that I recommend for Python development. Yes, there's a million other ones that you can use, but the one that I always use is Visual Studio Code. It's also just good to get practice with this, because if you ever work in another language, chances are you're going to be using Visual Studio Code. So I would highly recommend just use this, get away from PyCharm, get away from those other ones, use VS Code. That's my recommendation after 10 years of Python programming. Anyways, how do we set up VS Code? It's actually very, very simple to set it up for writing Python code. Once you install VS Code, there's a little kind of extensions button here. So click on extensions, and you can see I have a bunch, right? I've already installed a bunch of extensions. For you guys, what you're going to want to install is the Python extension. This is provided by Microsoft. Fun fact, I actually worked on this extension when I worked at Microsoft. It has almost 70 million downloads. Now, this is a very good extension, and this pretty much sets everything up for you automatically. So install this Python extension. You might have to restart VS Code. And now we can actually create a Python file, and I will show you how to run it and change the interpreter that you're using. So what I've done here is I've just opened up VS Code. Notice I'm not in a folder or anything like that. And if I get out of full screen mode, which you can get into by pressing F11 on your keyboard, I can go File, and then I can open a folder, for example, if I want to start working in some kind of project. So I'm going to type Open Folder. I'm going to go to my desktop, and let's just make a folder and call this Tutorial. Okay, of course I have a tutorial folder. Let's rename this to Python ENV. Okay, so this is typically how I start a new project. I open up a folder. Inside of this folder, I can write anything that I need. Okay, now I have a folder open. If I want to create a new file, I can press this button, and I can do something like test.py. All right, I've got a Python file open. Let's type print hello world. And what you're going to see now, I'll just zoom in a little bit, is that we have this button up here in the top right-hand corner that will run our Python code for us. We also can run and debug. I'm not going to talk about that right now. Okay, so now the question becomes, when I press this run button, what interpreter is going to be used? Am I using 3.9? Am I using 3.11? Am I using the Conda base interpreter? And that's going to be different for all of you. The way to change this once you have the Python extension installed, is to hit Control, Shift, and the letter P on your keyboard, and then to type the following, Python, and then select interpreter. So I'm going to hit select interpreter, and you're going to see here that it gives me every single one of the virtual environments that I have. This is done by the Python extension, and it shows me every single interpreter here. So this is where you select the Python interpreter you want to use. Now notice the default one is 3.10. You can actually set this by kind of clicking on this button here and changing what the default interpreter path is. Anyways, I'm not going to do that here, but you can see that you can change which one you want. So I can use, for example, 3.10. And then I can run this, and it will run this using Python version 3.10. Now, of course, you could also just go in the terminal and you could activate the virtual environment you want. So I could say activate. I think I had one called, say, Robert. And then I could say Python and then test.py, and I could just run it myself in that environment. However, I know a lot of you want to use this button, so that's how you change the interpreter. There you go. That's all there is to it. That's how you use VS Code for Python development. All right, so now for the next part of this video, I'm going to show you how to set up Python formatting. Now, to do this from VS Code, you can hit Control-S, and it should actually just give you a kind of pop-up here when you try to save a file that requires formatting, like mine does right now. And it should say, do you want to install Black, or do you want to install Autocomplete, or one of these Python formatters? Now, this command never works for me, but for you guys, it might. And what you can do is hit yes, or change it to use one of the different formatters. Personally, I like using Black as my formatter, but it doesn't really matter. Autocomplete is going to be the same, and I've never used this Yap F1, so I don't know, use whatever one you see fit. I'm sure they all do a very similar thing. Okay, so this pop-up though, if for some reason you don't get it showing up, right, when you're inside of a Python file and you're saving, hit Control-Shift-P on your keyboard, and then type format, and then document with. Then hit Python, and if you don't have a formatter installed, it should pop you up here with this pop-up, and then you can press this button. Now for me, because I have kind of a messed up environment because of all the tutorials I do, you can see this doesn't work for me. So I actually get a mistake. Now I'll show you how to fix this error if this pops up for you. So I'm just going to clear this here. First, I'm going to change into an environment I want this formatter for. So I'm going to say, let's go conda activate, and let's actually activate our base environment. Then inside of here, I'm going to type pip install black, and that will install the formatter for me. Okay, so I'm going to install that inside of here. Notice it's already installed in my base environment, and that's fine. Now, if you're on Mac or Linux, you may need to use the pip3 command. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so now that black is installed, I'm going to change my Python interpreter. I can do that by hitting down here as well, by the way, to my base environment, which is this one. Now that I'm in my base environment, if I save, I should get auto formatting. And you can see that I do. It automatically formats my data here for me. All right, so that is formatting. One last thing you should have a look at is the formatting kind of configurations. So I'm going to go to the settings in VS Code, and I'm going to type format here. And you can change a few of the options here so that you format when you say paste something in. I hate that. That really annoys me, so I turn that off. Or you can format on save. I put this on, so every time I hit save, it automatically formats the file. You also can manually invoke a format by doing Control-Shift-P, and then you can say format document, or you can save without formatting the document, which is what I do quite a bit. All right, let's move on to the next topic. All right, so the next topic is autocomplete. Now, this is very important, especially if you're writing a lot of code, and by default, the Python extension does have an autocomplete, which I believe is called Jedi. Might be different now. Either way, there is a default autocomplete for almost every programming language based on the extension you install in Visual Studio Code. Now, I don't like the default one, so instead I use Tab 9. Now, this is not a sponsorship for Tab 9. This is a paid product. I pay for this. They do have a free version as well, but this is personally what I recommend for an autocomplete, especially if you code a lot. I think it's like 20 bucks a month or something. Anyways, I use this. That's what I use. You don't have to use this. Okay, so if you want to use that, you can download it. I'll even let you guys find the link on your own so you don't think I'm giving you an affiliate link or anything like that. And to see Tab 9, you can see that I have it activated here in Visual Studio Code. And if I click on this, it gives me kind of like some stats and stuff about this. All right. Anyways, there you go. That is Tab 9. Now, if you don't want to use Tab 9, which most of you will not be using because you don't want to use a paid version, you of course can use GitHub Copilot. There's a little button here that you can click on for kind of activating Copilot. Now, I don't have Copilot, hence why I'm not using it. Otherwise, I probably would. Other than that, if you want to set up your autocomplete, you can go to settings, and it's actually called Intellisense. So if I type Intellisense here, something should be popping up. All right, so the option here is actually under language server. So if you go to Python language server, you can change the language server, which is what provides your Intellisense or the autocomplete for you. You have Jedi, Pylance, which is a more advanced version, actually, now that I remember hearing about it. So you can change it to Pylance, and then you'll be using that by default for your, your Python autocomplete. Anyways, you shouldn't really need to configure this. It should be set up for you, but I just wanted to let you guys know I do use a special autocomplete. I think it's worth it, but it's up to you. All right, so now we're moving on to the last section, which is kind of extra extensions, or let's call it like a bonus. Now, for Visual Studio Code, you can see when I go to this extensions pane here, I have a lot of extensions. Now, I work in a lot of different programming languages, so that's why I have so many. So some of the key ones I have, if I kind of go through them here, is Code Spell Checker. I love this one because I make a ton of spelling mistakes, and this really saves me quite a bit from pushing in kind of mixed up variable names or comments or something along those lines. So I would highly recommend you download the Code Spell Checker. All of these you can just search and you'll find them yourselves. I have the Django extension. This gives you some snippets and some more syntax and kind of code completions for Django. And then I'm trying to find any other Python-related ones. I have a Jinga. Now, if you ever worked in Django, then you probably want the Jinga extension, which makes writing your Jinga HTML a little bit more readable. And I think that's about it. I have this Prettier extension. This works for other code files, unfortunately not for Python. This will automatically format, say, JavaScript code or JSON code. So it's nice because oftentimes I'm working with JSON files or other types of code. Of course, I have the Tab 9 extension, and then I have a WSL as well, which actually a lot of you will probably like, so that you can have some Linux-like commands inside of Windows. And I believe if you use PowerShell, which is one of the terminal options you can use in VS Code here, by just going here and selecting PowerShell. So where it says new terminal, just hit PowerShell. You'll get access to a lot of WSL commands. I think that's by default now in Windows, but don't quote me on that. All right. So with that said, guys, I think I'm going to wrap up the video here. This was really all I need to show you for my Python environment setup. The most important part being the interpreters. Once you understand the interpreters, it's very simple to, kind of mess with your Python environment, change things around, but it's definitely a big headache if you don't understand that you have multiple versions on your system and you're using the pip command and you have no idea where you're installing packages. So with that said, I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope you guys found this helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in another YouTube video.